Back to our top story now, and Grant Williams is our man with an eye on the big picture. He's the strategy advisor at Vulpes hedge fund and author of the investment newsletter Things That Make You Go, and he joins us now from Singapore. Grant Williams, welcome.
Hey, Tiki, here we are again.
Here we are again, but this time we've got a G8 wash-up in Chicago, just motherhood statements, no new decisions agreed. It's pretty depressing.
Look, you know, it's turning into the world's worst soap opera. I mean, we've now had another get-together, another shrimp fest, as a lot of people like to call these things, and what we've ended up with is a motherhood statement, as you say, which really doesn't address the problem. And worse than previous meetings, you know, we've had Hollande commenting on Spanish banks, we've had Rajoy saying he's got no right to comment on them, and we've now had David Cameron coming out and telling the Greeks they really need to shape up or ship out. So it really is starting to come apart at the seams fairly quickly now.
I guess one development is that Germany, Angela Merkel, really does seem pretty friendless now with her austerity drive.
Well, that was always going to be the way, because she's the only politician that seems to be fighting against the simple part of the process, which is to print free money and give it to people. But now, you know, what we're seeing in Europe now with these bank runs, which are definitely starting to matter to people, is something that once it gets started could be very problematic for people. I mean, you take Greece, for example, where since 2010, Greek deposits, their national banks have fallen by about 40%. And last week we saw about 700 million euros a day being taken out of Greek banks. They're averaging 3 billion euros a month being withdrawn. And the smart money's long gone. The smart money always goes first. And now we're seeing that spread to Spain and even the UK, where people are taking money out of a Spanish-owned bank, even though it's ring-fenced.
But when the American president, no less, starts talking about growth and putting that sort of pressure on Germany, do you think the lady might be for turning?
I don't think so. Not just yet, anyway. I think things are going to have to get very, very bad before she does cave in. We've seen the first steps being taken with Schäuble's comments last week about a slightly elevated level of inflation for a short period of time. They're certainly starting to prepare the German people for the printing presses to be turned on. But that's going to be a fairly long, drawn-out process. It's not something they're going to do overnight, unless they're forced into doing it with a bank holiday in Greece, for example, which looks ever more likely, I'm afraid to say.
It's extraordinary because America itself, of course, is pretty much slowing down to a standstill now, and the last Fed minutes hinted at more stimulus if economic conditions warranted, or if they lost momentum. And they've got this fiscal cliff, they call it, happening at the end of the year, where they've got fiscal cuts of what, $1 trillion looming, something like that. How is this all going to pan out for the US?
Well, the US has a very, very real problem come December 31st, but I mean, we are a long, long way from there yet. I mean, we've got to get through June 16th before this next Greek election. And right now that seems a lifetime away with what's going on in the Greek banking system. And we are really approaching the point where there may have to be a Greek bank holiday. And this whole Greek situation that people were talking about it being an orderly default only a few months ago, that was the likely negative outcome. People are now realising that it will very quickly spread to Spain and to Italy and to Portugal and Ireland. And once this thing gets going, it's going to be very difficult to stop.
But do you think from an American point of view that Greece might be the thing that Ben Bernanke can actually use as an excuse for some sort of fiscal stimulus from the US side?
Well, on the US side, obviously, we have an election coming up in November, and the Fed is supposed to be apolitical. So their window to act really ends in June. If they start doing anything to stimulate the economy after that, it can be seen as some kind of political move. So I'm sure the Fed will be looking for any and all excuses to juice the market come June. And I have a very nasty feeling they're going to be given some pretty decent excuses to do so.
What do you think the current state of the ECB is at the moment, and even the Bundesbank?
Well, they seem to be at loggerheads. I think Draghi has room to cut rates, and I think he's going to be forced to do so. The Bundesbank is still towing a very hard line, saying that they're not going to accept money printing. But ultimately, one way or another, as we've said before, you and I, and we've spoken, this is going to come down to printing an awful lot of euros. They either decide to do it, or they get forced into doing it. And the Germans are either going to have to toe the line and fall in behind everybody else, or they're going to have to leave, I suspect. And we really are approaching that. Make no bones about it. We are approaching the end game here.
Yeah, I see the Spanish finance minister tonight says there is no need for any external help for Spanish banks, notwithstanding what happened with Bankia in the last week or so. Confidence seems to be waning, though, in all these government-backed institutions. So we've just seen in France the mortgage lender 3CIF. And that's now struggling after a Moody's downgrade. We've got more downgrades coming, I gather, of other European banks.
Absolutely. And the thing that you have to, in this process, learn to beware the most are finance ministers telling you there's nothing to be worried about.
Well, exactly. So you don't believe finance ministers in Europe anymore?
No, I don't think you can believe anyone who is in a position where what they say is intended to jawbone the market in a certain direction. I mean, obviously, no one's going to tell you that the banks aren't safe until they lock the doors. And with these banks, and this is the critical issue right now, these bank runs. I mean, they seriously have to be focused upon. We didn't have in 1930, in the Great Depression in America, where the bank runs were the problem. We didn't have the internet then. So bank runs are going on. You're not going to see people queuing up at ATMs. You're not going to see people in the streets 25 deep. People are taking their money out from the comfort of their own living rooms, and this will suddenly swamp people very, very quickly, Tiki.
Grant Williams, thank you very much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.